Well, it seems like Daniel Ricciardo has made returning to Formula 1 all the rage. Now another Red Bull Classic driver has entered the fray. Also, yay, 10,000 subscribers, woo! So are we going to be seeing now, after many months of relative silence, Sebastian Vettel entering the world of Formula 1? Maybe he might be returning as a driver, or perhaps leading the whole dang widget. It's actually possible. Sebastian Vettel is a very private person. We've rarely heard anything about what he gets up to outside of the Formula 1 circus, other than the fact that he likes to, collect bikes and retool them. He has a garage, which is actually kind of neat, and he has a really loving family. I'm actually going to admit, I didn't like Sebastian Vettel back in the day, and I was really conflicted too because Michael Schumacher, who I did like back in the day, liked him, but I've now mellowed out. It's quite clear that he is no longer the same person that he used to be back in his dominating days. I mean, after all, 5 years of being at Ferrari will grind down any person. The meat of this particular video has something to do with what he just said during the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Planet F1 was reporting on this, and it really got me thinking. I actually regret not going, and I nearly bought tickets, so do comment below if you'd like me to cover it next year. He was there to promote his race without trace thing. That's the thing he was showcasing at Silverstone last year by converting his Nigel Mansell Red 5 1992 Williams car into running synthetic fuels. That means it doesn't actually use polluting fuel and stuff that actually requires oil. That car got wheeled out again, as well as this delightful picture of Sebastian Vettel in his own overalls, which are amazing. I still love that helmet design, and I'm glad he actually decided on one because it was really hard to keep track of Vettel's helmet design because he changed it every single time he won, and trust me, he won a lot. But it's still weird to see Sebastian Vettel in a McLaren car. Wow, it's just getting my mind buzzing about, oh wow, what if he drove for McLaren? And I feel like all of his talk about the environment is genuine. I actually saw him on BBC's Question Time last year, and he was really eloquent on that. He was really brutally honest about his contribution to the world of climate change, and he was really honest about it. I really recommend you go and check out some of those clips. Just look for BBC Question Time Vettel. He actually outtalked some of the actual official politicians on it. But the point is that we're now starting to see Sebastian Vettel come out of his shell. After many months of thinking that, oh, he's not going to return to Formula 1, all of this was speculation, he's just going to remain silent and enjoy his privacy after many years on the F1 circuit. But no, he's actually weighing in more and more and more. In regards to a possible return to Formula 1, he's now going, we'll see. We'll see what the future brings. He's actually being a little bit coy. He's being a little bit cheeky. He's like, oh, well, I know you might like it, but I've not really decided yet. We'll see what the future brings, yeah. So the spirit of Formula 1 is still there, and I can't wait to see what other classic F1 cars he's going to convert to synthetic fuels, because he's now got to get the whole set. He's got 1992, 1993. I wouldn't be surprised if he rocks up in Michael Schumacher's 1994 car. And not to mention for the fact he's now doing stuff with Red Bull, going around the Nürburgring in one of his classic Red Bull championship winning cars alongside Daniel Ricciardo, which also makes me think he's kind of starting to replace the likes of Mark Webber and David Coulthard, who did lots of publicity events driving the Red Bull cars in front of people. So I think that would make a lot of sense, because Vettel and Ricciardo instead of DC and Webber, I'm sorry, but those two younger guys are a bit more of a draw. And now he's becoming a bit more of a pundit by voicing in on Nick de Vries' sacking from AlphaTauri, voicing it as brutal in the way that it just suddenly ended, and he hoped that Nick de Vries actually finds more success elsewhere, which is him well and all that. So when you actually get Sebastian Vettel voicing in, it kind of makes me think about that whole shebang, that it was really spontaneous, and I think that Helmut Marko really regrets his decision in buying Nick de Vries and kind of is hoping to sweep it under the carpet, but now everyone's kind of going, that's not good, mate. But either way, I want to talk properly about what this all means. Now the fact that Vettel is open to a possible return to Formula 1 in some capacity, there are 5 possible ways about how he could return. By the way, I've turned on memberships. That means you can now be part of the VS posse, so go and press the join button below to see what you can get. Cool emojis like these. The least likely will be him returning as a driver. Yes, of course, he is a 4-time world champion, but in his time at Aston Martin, his performance was rather mixed, especially when you compare it to the likes of Fernando Alonso, where he is completely decimating Lance Stroll. But in the time that Vettel was partnering Lance Stroll, it was a little bit more even, and it sort of gave us all the hope that Lance Stroll was improving if he could keep relatively close to the likes of Sebastian Vettel. I felt like Vettel's passion for Formula 1 had sort of waned, and the Aston Martin stint was more about trying to get things in motion, sort of emulating what Michael Schumacher did at Mercedes, establish a good functioning team for the future and see them rocket up the charts, which is exactly what Aston Martin is doing, and what Michael Schumacher did for Mercedes, and look what they got up to over the last decade. I feel that Sebastian's contributions were excellent for Aston Martin, and he was the good establishing driver that they needed in this incarnation of the Silverstone team. I don't think him returning as as a driver would be that likely, because I think he's past all of that. Going to every single circuit, training for all of that time, nah, I think he's done with all of that. I think he can be more useful in more of a kind of public capacity. Okay, maybe he could return as a team principal perhaps. Yeah, I think this might have legs. It all depends on who might he actually be succeeding. Maybe Laura Mekies, who's going to be the team principal of AlphaTauri from next year, or whatever they're going to call themselves. Maybe that might not work out, and they might bring in the Red Bull Group Sebastian Vettel to lead the junior team, since he started at Toro Rosso. I mean, technically he did a stint at BMW Sauber, but nobody really talks about that at the moment. But no, AlphaTauri being led by Sebastian Vettel, that would be fantastic. But that might be good because team principals these days, they do get a lot of publicity. But maybe 5-10 years ago, nobody would really know the team principals by their name. You might recognize them by their face. Since 2019, they're bigging them up. The Drive to Survive factor has made every single team principal somewhat recognizable. So to have Sebastian Vettel there, I think that would be absolutely great and really big up the team principals even more. And it'd be really cool to actually see the likes of Sebastian Vettel going up against Toto and Christian in all of those team principal briefings. And in terms of F1's Net Zero 2030 campaign, maybe Vettel could be good in terms of championing them for the daily running for teams and stuff like that. But in all, I think that might be a little bit wasted. It might not be quite enough of what Vettel wants to try and achieve with motorsport, because he wants to try and make it more sustainable, but I think he might be limited in terms of just being a team principal. Or maybe he could return as a global ambassador of sort to Formula One, being wheeled out on occasion to Grand Prix and talking about how well they're doing for their Net Zero 2030 campaign, and they're doing great, and what they might actually do, because he has been talking to Stefano Domenicali regarding the possible future of what F1 can do for the environment, and alright, that's okay, that's great. But at the same time though, I feel that that would not be quite as genuine as what Vettel wants. He wants genuine change, and I feel like he might not be able to do that just wearing a cap and just saying platitudes in front of the cameras. I feel that might not be quite enough, but I feel that might be more likely in terms of the potential future for Sebastian Vettel being a face of Formula One, because quite honestly, at the moment, F1's reputation amongst the grassroots fans is a little shaky. I mean, you got Domenicali talking about, oh, introducing grand slams during sprints to make it more exciting. No. Just refine what you already have. Sprints are okay. I know that might be controversial, but they are okay. Just, you don't need to do any more. Just concentrate on what you have and just make the cars more equal. That's all. But okay, let's talk about the two that I really think are possible. He actually becomes a member of the board of directors of Formula One, possibly leading that net zero campaign to try and really kick it into high gear. I'm pretty sure that Vettel has done a lot of research regarding synthetic fuels in his race without trace time, and realizing what could be possibly done to try and keep Formula One somewhat what it is, and not having to go fully electric or fully hydrogen powered, by being able to keep the heart of Formula One power units with V6s, V8s, V10s with sustainable fuels, e-fuels or something like that, whatever can come along to power traditional combustion engines, actually be taken seriously instead of just being told to go along with the party line. He can form the party line, and I think him wearing an official F1 shirt like Ross Brawn did when he was setting out all the technical regulations for the future of Formula One, that'd be really cool. But then, you know what? Why don't he just lead the whole dang thing? Sebastian Vettel becomes the new face of Formula One. Stefano Domenicali, he's had his time. It might be clear that what he's trying to do isn't quite good enough. Maybe Liberty Media might replace him with Sebastian Vettel. Why? Because he's popular. He is popular with the fans, people love him, people felt sorry for him on missing out on the world title for Ferrari. He showed his wholesome side. He is a really good bloke, and I'm really happy. And when he was helping out Mick Schumacher, my heart was melting all the time. I feel that him being the top bod of Formula One and setting its course for a more sustainable future, whilst also keeping the spirit of combustion engines intact, that might be really, really likely to happen because, again, he's popular. People will be cheering whatever he says. He can actually steer the path into something a little bit more authentic than what's being said. Instead of talking about means to try and make things more competitive, no. Talk about ways of how you can keep Formula One the way it is without having to worry about it going fully electric. They can't do that, by the way, because Formula E has an exclusivity clause, so you can't really do that until 2039 anyway. What Sebastian Vettel knows is how to make a classic F1 car run on things that are modern for the 21st century. So he could just do more of that. That could easily be done. but I would love to see Sebastian Vettel as the new chief of Formula 1. Give it 5 or 10 years and I wouldn't be surprised if he replaces Dominicali, or at the very least, he actually gets a spot at the F1 table in dictating what happens to F1 before 2030. So this whole idea of seeing what the future brings, I think this is genuine. He genuinely cares about Formula 1, and I think he's going to care in a way that will see him probably running the show eventually.